Hi, my name is Danielle, and just want to welcome you to the Stronger Roots podcast. Today is our first episode. So this podcast is all about parental alienation, coercive control, and surviving the kind of loss that rarely is ever talked about. I am a mother, an advocate, and someone who is living through the pain of being erased from their child's life. We're going to start at the root today. What exactly is coercive control? And my partner in crime, Beth, who is a fierce advocate. And I'll let you kind of talk about yourself, Beth. What?
Okay. All right. So hi, my name's Beth, and we started Stronger Roots a couple years ago. Kind of been sitting on a little bit, deciding how we're going to move forward with this. But Stronger Roots is an advocacy platform, and that is why we're doing this podcast. We have to bring awareness to parental alienation because there's a lot of information out there about it, and that information is not necessarily correct. That information is being used to fit an agenda, and that agenda is destroying families. And it's destroying mothers, it's destroying fathers. It's not just women. We refer to women in this podcast mostly because that's the majority, but we do know that there are fathers this is being used against as well. So when we talk about parental alienation, we talk about coercive control, we're talking about the things that people don't really focus on because a lot of these things are in the mental and emotional realm, which are not in a lot of our domestic violence laws in our states. And because those aren't in the domestic violence laws, they aren't included in the criminal aspect as would be a physical altercation. Mm-hmm. So through this journey, Danielle and I both have been in abusive relationships in the past. Hers was more recent than mine, and mine started and ended probably 38, 39 years ago, and was out of that been out of that probably for about 37 years, which is great. But that coercive control, that mental abuse, that emotional abuse, the threats, the fear, everything that goes with that doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. And I've had to deal with that for years. It has affected relationships and is affected my decision making in a lot of things. It's just created a lot of grief and a lot of mental stress and an emotional stress that really doesn't go away. So even though hers is more recent than mine, it's a good example of how long this can really last. And even therapy, years and years of therapy, has not been able to heal all of it. Some of it's still there. So that's why we're doing this entire podcast. As we go from episode to episode, we will start introducing the awareness of different topics, the description and what those are as we go through our stories and talk about things that have happened in our families. We will be bringing on people to talk about their families, and we are reaching out across the country to connect with other people. And we also have a lot of people in our own circles of family and friends that we're able to bring in on this. You're going to be able to see a vast area of how this type of abuse affects women, the men, children, everyone, and the entire families, and aunts, uncles, everybody involved in the family. This is something that needs to be brought awareness to the family court system. We will not bash the family court system. We will not do that in this podcast. That's not what we're here for. We are here to educate and bring awareness. And our goal and our hope is that we'll be able to bring this education and awareness to the family court system to help judges understand. Because in the majority of the cases, these narcissistic abusers are so good at what they do, they manipulate the judges, and the judges aren't aware of it. So yeah, that's our goal in the interim.
Yeah. And when we talk about like coercive control, I didn't know what that definition looked like. And I have a very generic one. I know, Beth, you have a coercive control definition also that we'll talk about in further podcasts that we go. But just to start out, coercive control is a pattern of domination that strips away a person's autonomy through emotional, psychological, and non-physical tactics. One of a quote that I found that talks about coercive control Coercive control is not about violence. It's about imprisonment without bars. And that's by Evan Stark. So when we think about coercive control, some common tactics of coercive control is gaslighting, isolation from friends and family, monitoring behavior or movements, emotional manipulation and guilt, withholding money, affection, access to resources, making you feel that everything is your fault. So some common examples of that would be like, why do you always make the kids anxious? You're the reason this family is falling apart. Um, and you can't survive without me. So these are just like insults. They're strategies to break down your sense of self. And that's exactly what coercive control is. So maybe, the thing about it is like, I think the biggest issue that you have with coercive control is the fact that you don't see it, and it's really almost kind of like you're walking through a fog, and you're too close to the scene, you're too close to the situation, that until you step away from it and you start working on yourself, or you go to therapy, you have friends or someone that kind of points this out to you, you really don't know what is happening, because there's a sense of, I always like to say it was kind of like you're Snow White. You're waking up from like this dreamlike state, and I think the tactic for a lot of abusers or manipulators are the fact that they want to keep you in this fight or flight or freeze state almost all the time. Your nervous system is so dysregulated that you don't realize what is happening until you go and step away from it. And I'd like to say for my previous life, or my my ex-partner, it wasn't until I went to therapy and I was working on some past traumas and things like that, and and they asked, how is your relationship, what's going on, and we were doing EMDR. And if you don't know what EMDR is, it's
Eye
like,
movement
there
desensitization,
we go. I was just gonna say, like,
rapid reprocessing.
yeah, so it's basically very much like you're moving your eyes back and forth, and it moves traumatic memories from one side to the other side of your brain. And there's a whole bunch of science to that. It's really, really excellent for trauma. But it really cleared some things for me. And during that time, when it cleared some things for me, I was kind of able to lift myself up and out and see kind of what was going on. And that was the first kind of like start to unraveling. And it is very much an unraveling. And so in this podcast, I think, we want to share some of our personal stuff. We want to really just kind of focus on like, what to do about this. What can we, this is a Stronger Roots is a grassroots kind of, nonprofit. And we really want to change some things. It's not about just sitting here giving education and all that kind of stuff. I really want to see laws change in Ohio and other states. And, I think from what I've read, a lot of states are starting to recognize this, but it's very slow. And we have to get better, because in the process, lives are being damaged and destroyed because we're just not there yet.
No, and it's also considered post-separation abuse, and there's not enough emphasis put on post-separation abuse. And family court, they're not recognized. The judge knows what the judge is told in the moment the judge is told in that courtroom. They don't have the ability to research or know the people or get to know them, not like maybe a guardian ad litem would be to go visit each other in the homes and stuff. And even then, I mean, I'm a guardian ad litem, but I'm not an attorney guardian ad litem. I know we're supposed to stay neutral, but sometimes these manipulators are so good that they do influence a guardian ad litem. I've seen it happen, and I'm not saying that to put anybody down. I've seen it happen. And they've kind of been able to work them and gaslight them, much like they have their former soon-to-be spouse. And it's that whole power and control thing, because they have the power. They know exactly how. And then how do you get into this? And I've had a lot of women and say, well, I don't even know how this happened. Well, it happens very slow.
Yeah.
It happens gradually. And it's much like when you have a really good friend and you're in a really good terms, and then that friend does something that hurts your feelings, and that really hurts. And you're not sure how to handle it. But the spouse is doing that on purpose, because the more times they can hurt your feelings and then shame you for having the feeling of being hurt. How dare you not trust me? How dare you think however it's put, that just continues to, so it becomes normal.
Right.
It's much like a child who is born into a family of addiction and abuse and things. That just becomes normal. That child doesn't know anything outside that home until they get old enough to experience friends and older. That you're just living in that cycle of abuse, which is where, like you talked about, the isolation comes in, because that's one of the things, and you don't really notice that.
Right.
It's no, we're involved with the kids, or we're involved doing our own family thing, or we're involved building our own little family over here. And what happens is that's manipulation. And a lot of times that's not setting boundaries.
Right.
That's manipulation, and it's gaslighting that person into believing that this is how things are supposed to be. And anybody who speaks against that is not okay. That's a toxic person. They're trying to tear apart what we have. They don't understand what we're trying to do. And then and then the kids come along, and then the kids are used against you. And then it's okay, well, what are you going to do? Leave because you won't take the kids?
How else to hurt a mother is to, or a father, a parent,
Exactly.
should
And
say.
it's the whole power and control thing.
Right.
And I pulled up the power and control wheel, and this is used a lot in domestic violence, but it's, using the children to make her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, especially at the separation and going through a divorce, and using the visitation to harass her and threatening to take the children away. And that's the one, it's your biggest fear. Somebody's going to take your kids away from you, which is exactly what happened to you.
Right.
And it's putting the things in the kid's head, and then it being all wonderful and great and giving them things, and then then putting in a little bit of fear and control to let them know that, well, if you speak out, you're going against me, and you're betraying me, and I'm the one here taking care of you.
Yeah.
And then and kids can't handle that. They can't handle that, because kids naturally do not pick one parent over the other and become mean at another parent.
Right.
And these kids don't have the ability and the brain development to understand, to see that they're being manipulated and controlled, and the damage it's doing to the other parent.
Right.
And that this other parent is doing it through them, and the isolation, and then the just the emotional abuse, just the constantly making you feel like, because from experience, when you're told over and over and over that nobody will ever want you, you're not good enough, you can't make it without me, when I was the only one working at the time.
Right. Right.
Okay. Things just don't make sense, but you're knocked down so far that you can't see the forest for the trees, for a lack of a better description.
Right.
And it's just that constant all the time, and the walking on the eggshells, and you don't even realize. It's like, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to plan this because of this. He always gets mad about it, or it's not worth it. And when you find yourself at the point where it's just not worth it to bring anything up, just go through your day and do what you have to do. Mind your business, stay out of the way. If that's how you're living your life, 99.9% of the time you are in a narcissistic relationship, abusive relationship.
Right.
And it's hard to break away from that. Very hard, because I was threatened. My life was threatened. I've often said that now that I've grown, and it's been 39 years, and I've grown to the point I wish he'd do it again.
Yeah.
Go ahead and try.
I know who
Because
you
you
are.
and I've
Yeah.
had that
Yeah.
conversation because you are so beat down, and I saw that with
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
what's the one thing I told you? One of these days you're going to dig in, you're going to find that inner bitch, and you're going to unleash
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
and he's going to rue the day
Mm-hmm.
that he messed with you and your
Yeah.
kids, and that's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that really struck me about what you said is like, they often have an analogy of like a frog being put in a pot of water. Okay, so if the frog's in the water
Yeah,
and you slowly, slowly turn that up, the frog is so used to what's happening. It's not, instead of putting a frog in boiling water, it would jump out, right?
yeah.
But it's slowly, slowly turning up. So you don't even know what is really truly happening. So that was just such a powerful analogy. And then the other thing I wanted to say too is that I worked in the domestic violence field for a very long time. And I still didn't recognize the fact that I was in a abusive relationship. And which is so strange to me. It is one of my things of like you really don't see until you see it. You're so busy with like raising children, going to school, packing lunches, doing this, doing that, that you don't realize what is happening in your own lane. And the what we do for survivors of domestic violence is we give them hotline numbers and we give them support and we give them shelter and we help them. And we preach about, if you need to get out of a domestic violence situation, here we go. Here's a person you can talk to. Here's a number. Here's a shelter. Go for it. But what we fail is after they leave, to like when they get stabilized. There's a period of time that is one of the most deadliest for that survivor. And what happens is, and it never was talked about when I was in the domestic violence field 15, 20 years ago, is post separation abuse. And that is actually 10 times worse is than the domestic violence, because they are out because you have destroyed them. You've destroyed them. You've taken away their power and they cannot live without that. And so financial abuse goes with that. And one of the most painful things is children, right? What's going to level a mother or a father is taking away their children. And so they use the children as pawns to do their dirty work. And it's I can talk more about my story as we go, but I really think that we have to do something more than just tell a woman that she has to leave, because while yes, that's true, we leave them. We give them all the resources to get out, but we don't, make sure that they're stable,
True. And as much of there's a lot of really, really good resources, but in my experience with with my other organization and street outreach and things, there is nothing that helps them leave in that moment. These other organizations are there for after the fact, after they've left. One of the most dangerous times is to leave in that moment. I had to do it while he was at work through the day, and my dad came and packed me up and we left. We also were very cognizant of what was going to happen after, and he came after me, because when you're taking their power, that is the most dangerous time. Some of them, once they get to a point where they realize, okay, that they're not, they'll find somebody else to distract that on. Maybe. Doesn't mean you let your guard down. But the organizations I've worked in called is, well, we're here after they leave. Okay, well, what do you do in the moment? I've got somebody I need to get out now. Am I going to drive over there myself, put her stuff in my car?
Yeah.
Get her out. She's got kids. What are we going to do?
Right.
Well, we can't intervene in that. That's another thing that we're lacking. How do we create in that space the ability? And then, the financial piece of this is, had I not had my parents, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And so many women, that money is so guarded They can't even take out enough to even, I was watching something on TikTok the other day, and it was somebody, and sometimes these people do things and it's like, I don't know their situation, but sometimes it's so misleading. Like, go out and you get in, and here's how I prepared to leave. I got a job. I started putting money back. Okay. You go out and get a job. He's going to know what you're making, and he's going to want to know where the difference is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They are that in tune to that. So you may not be able to put money aside. There are a lot of places where you can create online accounts where nothing gets mailed to your home. It's all an app on your phone. You can take the app on and off if you need to and access it. You can access it on a computer at work, someplace where they won't have access to it and know.
Mm-hmm.
But still, if you are working, they're going to know what you're making. They're going to know if there's something coming out of there. They're going to know if you've taken $100 out of the ATM. Where did it go? What did it do? Are you cheating on me? Who are you seeing? Where was this? Where was that? I don't think that people understand it's not that easy to leave.
Yeah.
It is not, especially when you have kids. Mine was 8 weeks old when I was a little older than that. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 9, 10 weeks old when I left. And I had to plan that out with my family.
Yeah.
And I had to be very, very careful. It didn't matter that I didn't have any money. I mean, at the time I was 20 years old. It didn't matter, or 21. It didn't matter because I had my parents, my grandparents, my aunt and uncle. I had that right there that I didn't need any money.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you go on and then you've been in that relationship for 10, 15 years or more, there's a lot of control there. There's a lot. You can't just get money and hide it. So I know for a fact that we are missing that space in between the decision that I need to start making an exit plan. How do I make now? A lot of these organizations will help you make an exit plan.
Yeah. Right.
But when you start to execute that, that's where the danger comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the
Extreme
safety
danger.
planning, you have to do safety planning.
Yes.
And then not only that, but and then follow it through. The piece of it is like, I was so fortunate that I had support. I had I had my parents, and I had some really trusted friends and family that I could tell, this is what's happening and going on. But, my heart goes out to people who don't have that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and not only that, because, they have family that says, "Oh, I didn't see anything going on. What are you talking about? For years you played it off that everything is fine and you're great." And so like it's about, the woman also questioning herself. Am I making the wrong decision? I'm taking my kids away from their father, their mother, or whoever, and so there's a lot of like brain fog that goes on with all of that. And I can remember at one of my lowest points is writing things down of what was being said, what was reality, and what was really happening, because my brain was they have a term for it, and it's called cognitive dissonance. So it's what you see and what is actually being told to you, so, or being said to you or whatever. So it's like two different things, and your brain just it like shorts out and you can't figure out what is happening.
Yeah.
And I say that was like probably a huge mental breakdown for me, because I couldn't grasp really truly what was happening, because it was so escalated and it was so intense. And there was no going back, but it was, how do I get support for this? Who's going to understand this when I don't even understand what's going on? And journaling and writing and trying to get my head into a better spot of what exactly is going on. And this is abuse. This is not normal. This is not a normal situation. And when you add kids into that mix, the kids are off the rails. They don't know what's hit them. They're hearing one thing from a parent and another thing from another parent, and they're so confused, and they're so like, you know um
Who do I
just
trust? I don't
who
know
do
which one to
right,
trust.
who
They're
do
both
I
my
trust?
parents. And
Yeah.
then it gets in front of a judge And again, not knocking family court, but it gets in front of a judge and it becomes a high conflict divorce.
Right. Right.
It's a high conflict because you're both fighting, but the thing of it is, if they really knew that the one who's making themselves look like the better person, the one who is doing all the speaking, while the other one is over here being more quiet, listening, being more reserved, if they would just recognize that simple little thing
Mm-hmm.
and then take both into consideration, because
Yeah.
yeah. And in your situation, I mean, it just,
I was going to say one of the tactics that a lot of abusers use is very calm, cool, collected. They have their thoughts. They know they can speak
exactly.
eloquently. They have been doing this their whole life. They are master manipulators. They are able to convince, they are able to lay out the story, clear cut. Hey, Your Honor, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. Meanwhile, usually the victim is so anxious and so PTSD symptoms, is so out of their mind, um, just so highly dysregulated. And for me, sitting in a courtroom next to someone, that had caused such harm to me was just not possible. I had to do all of my hearings via Zoom. And I'm so glad that the judges and court system allowed that, because having sit in next to a person that did this to you, would have been just, I would have had to have been medicated. I mean, because this is, we're not talking about, hey, Jimmy stole my shoe and I'm really pissed off about it. You're talking about um causing such harm and damage to your whole life, and using your kids. And um one of the things that, we'll touch too on, other episodes is parental alienation and how that starts. But I think one of the things that hurts so badly is that, speaking only from a mother's perspective, is we are taught mama bear, right? No one messes with our kids. Nothing. I mean, you stand in front of a bullet and you don't even think twice. And when that relationship is somehow being messed with, or severed in some way, it is the most painful, um gut-wrenching thing that you can even imagine, because you think, how is this possible? How, like, you've been with these children. And in my case, like, I raised my children, like I was able to be home at, raising my kids and spending time with them. But what highly manipulative people are masters at, are finding a little crack, a little wedge. And that is what has happened in my situation, is finding that little bit of maybe, my child and I were fighting, and then they would take that little wedge and say, well, yeah, your mom is kind of crazy. You know that? Your mom is kind of nuts. Your mom's kind of a narcissist. Your mom's kind of this and that. And so then that child starts to rely on that other parent, and start to confide in, oh yeah, I see this from mom or dad or whoever. And then that's where that trauma bond starts with that, you
Mhm.
know, and it's, I got off on a tangent there, but the court system is, we have to do better. We have to do better. And I don't want to get down on them, because I think that there is a lot of good things come from the court system. However, I think that we have to educate,
Well,
judges.
right. I mean, and it is about education, because
Mhm.
you and I both know, in
Yeah,
everything that we've done in our professions, it is difficult. It is difficult to form opinions and to be effective without the lived experience,
right.
right? So I would never, had I not been through what I've been through,
Hmm.
I would not be as vocal about it, because I don't have that lived experience. Now, And that doesn't go to say that, well, if you've experienced trauma, that then you're an expert on trauma. No, there is education that comes with it. And that's where we're getting at here. That's why we're doing this, is to bring that education. There are a lot of things that judges hear. I mean, I'm involved in juvenile court, and I'm telling you, I do not envy those judges and their job at all.
Right.
There are some life altering decisions that are coming, from that bench. And I do not envy that of them. But there are open opportunities for education to help them understand. When I was going through my situation, there weren't any ability to file based on domestic violence or anything like that, because there wasn't any, even though there had been at the time, there weren't any bruises, any marks, anything to photograph. And if you did anything to photograph, you have nothing to prove. It's your word against us. That's what I was told by someone who went on to be the prosecuting attorney for a neighboring county, who knew me my entire life, family friend. But that's the way it was. This was back in the late 80s, and that's just how it was. And that argument, well, you can't prove it.
Yeah.
We have come so far in our awareness and education over the years since I went through it. Yes, you can. Yes, you can prove a pattern of psychological abuse. Yes, you can. And that's the point of this, is being able to bring this to the forefront, get more attention on it, educate our judges if it's not something that they're going out looking for, because they're busy. They're doing their job. It's our job, I feel like, as advocates, to bring that information to them, to help them be able to make because I promise you, with your judges, if they were able to know things outside of what was presented to them in court, which that's all that's legally allowed to be considered, if they knew, your situation would have turned out 10 times differently. I promise you, because I know those judges, and I know that they would have understood. And that's part of our problem in the legal system too. And that's no fault of any judge or court. It's just our legal system is you're only allowed to present certain things. It's just the way that you're allowed to present things because of recognizing everyone's rights. Well, what's happening is the rights of the healthy parent who is being abused, those rights are being violated, and there's no one there to stand up and say, wait, this isn't okay. It's convoluted. So that is what our point is in doing this podcast with Stronger Roots, is to bring this education to the forefront. We're going to have guests. We're going to have workshops. There's going to be a lot of things that are coming down the road, and I'm looking forward to it. I know you are too.
Yeah.
And we will be posting these podcasts on our YouTube channel, because that's probably the best place right now to do it, to gain attraction with it and build it up. And we will put them out as soon as we complete each one, and we'll just see where it goes from there.
Yeah. I'm excited. And I think that this is a great topic. It's something that we, need to get educated on, support our friends, family, for what they might be going through, and just a general awareness.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
and
how we will be coming out with a website. We will be posting website. We will be posting Facebook page as we get more active. This is our initial launch of the podcast, and we're just going to take it from here, and things will be rolling out slowly, and we'll just see where it goes and see, who we can bring the education to the best. So, anything else to add?
No, I just want to thank you for watching. Beth, thank you for being such a force to be reckoned with. You are quite you're quite a wonderful advocate for people, and you've changed my life. And I just want to be able to pay it forward. That's kind of my I can't change my situation and where I'm at. All I can do is try to help someone else. And I think that you had that same kind of philosophy. You went through something so traumatic in your life, and you were able to recognize something that was going on in my life, and you turned around and helped me. You grabbed my hand to pull me up out of the trenches. And so I think that we feel as an obligation to others to be able to reach behind us and say, okay, this is the way, or help us
Yeah.
out of that. Because if not, all of that wasted trauma, right? It was
Yeah.
wasted trauma not to be able to help someone.
Exactly, exactly. And I promised myself a long, long time ago that I was going to do whatever I could to be the person that I didn't have. Because if I didn't have my family, what would have happened? And
Yeah.
I promised myself a long time ago that I don't know how many years it's going to take to make a difference, but we're going to do something to make a difference, because I don't ever want anyone to ever be told it's your word against his.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, but it's your word against his.
Yeah.
That's not
You
okay.
and I just have to say this really quick because I may not have a chance to say it again in this podcast or whatever, but and I know you've heard it from me before, but I literally was on the floor of my bedroom and not knowing how I was going to financially get out of the situation that I was in, and I had no other means of being able to do that. I had asked everyone in my circle, and no one could help me get the funds to be able to file. And you and I had been connected through the yoga business, and um and y- I asked, or I don't even think I asked. I just had mentioned what was going on with me, and you said to me, I've got you, meet me here, I've got the money for you. And I just was so blown out of the water of how your generosity, and because I could not see any other way out. There was no way that I was ever going to be able to make a change that I most needed to do unless you were a part of that. And so you most definitely changed my life. And so I just want to give you props to, like, you help so many people in this
Thank you.
life, and thank you for being that person
Thank
for
you.
me.
And
So
that was that whole thing was a God thing. The way that happened in that day or two, that whole thing, that was 100% a God thing.
yeah.
It was meant to be that way. It was. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I could.
Yeah. Well,
So
thank you.
okay. All
Thank
right. Well,
you.
that'll wrap up this episode of Stronger Roots, and we will be back soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.